Greek mythology isn't all poetry and marble statues. Beneath the temples and laurels lies a collection of stories built on blood, betrayal, and divine pettiness. These are the myths your textbooks skipped, the ones that remind you ancient Greece was as brutal as it was brilliant. 1. Cronus eats his children. Fearing a prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him, the Titan, Cronus swallowed each newborn whole. His wife Rhea hid the youngest, Zeus, by giving Cronus a stone wrapped in cloth instead. When Zeus grew up, he forced his father to regurgitate his siblings, beginning the Olympian reign. It's less mythology, more intergenerational paranoia, with digestion issues. 2. The birth of Aphrodite. When Cronus castrated his father Uranus, the discarded remains fell into the sea near Cyprus. From the foam that formed, Aphrodite emerged fully grown, symbolizing beauty born from violence. Ancient Greeks saw this as proof that creation and destruction were inseparable forces. The myth's elegance hides its disturbing origin. 3. Tantalus and the eternal punishment. King Tantalus betrayed divine trust by serving his son Pelops as food to the gods. They resurrected the boy and condemned Tantalus to eternal torment, starving in a pool where fruit and water retreat at his touch. His punishment inspired the word tantalize. It's one of the earliest moral lessons about arrogance before the divine. 4. Prometheus and the liver Prometheus defied Zeus by stealing fire and giving it to humankind. As punishment, he was chained to a Caucasian mountainside where an eagle devoured his regenerating liver daily. Fire represented knowledge and progress, so his suffering marked the eternal cost of enlightenment. Eventually, Hercules freed him, but the message endured. Rebellion fuels civilization. 5. The House of Atreus. A lineage cursed from deceit and murder. Atreus killed his brother's children and served them as food, triggering generations of revenge, from Agamemnon's sacrifice of his daughter Iphigenia to Orestes' matricide. Each act was both justice and sin. Greek audiences saw it as proof that divine curses infect entire bloodlines. 6. Oedipus and the prophecy. Told he would kill his father and marry his mother, Oedipus fled home to avoid it, only to fulfill it unknowingly. When the truth emerged, his mother hanged herself, and he blinded himself in despair. Sophocles' tragedy wasn't about fate being cruel, but about how humans create their own destruction by trying to escape it. 7. Medusa's transformation. Medusa was once a priestess of Athena, punished after being assaulted in the goddess's temple. Athena turned her hair into snakes and made her face lethal to any who looked at her. Later interpretations see the myth as a reflection of victim-blaming and divine hypocrisy, though ancient Greeks viewed it as a warning against desecrating sacred spaces. 8. Sisyphus and the endless stone. Sisyphus was a cunning, Corinthian king who tricked both humans and gods, even chaining death itself. For his deceit, Zeus condemned him to roll a boulder uphill forever, only to watch it fall each time. The myth embodies futility and human defiance. Philosophers later used it as a metaphor for persistence in meaningless struggle. 9. Pandora and the Jar of Evils. Created as humanity's first woman, Pandora received a sealed jar and the instruction never to open it. When curiosity won, she released all the world's miseries, disease, pain, and death, leaving only hope trapped inside. The myth explained human suffering as a divine test, portraying curiosity as both our gift and our curse. 10. The Minotaur and the Labyrinth. After King Minos refused to sacrifice a bull to Poseidon, the god cursed his wife Pasiphae with unnatural desire. She gave birth to the Minotaur, half man and half bull. Minos built a labyrinth to imprison it, feeding it Athenian youths until Theseus killed it. The story reflects Greek fears of chaos contained through human cunning. 11. Niobe and the death of pride. Niobe, queen of Thebes, mocked the goddess Leto for having only 2 children, while boasting of her own many. In retaliation, Apollo and Artemis killed all her sons and daughters. Turned to stone by grief, Niobe became a symbol of arrogance, punished by divine order. The myth illustrated how hubris could destroy not just rulers, but entire families. 12. The tragedy of Icarus. Daedalus built wings of feathers and wax for himself and his son Icarus to escape Crete. Despite warnings, Icarus flew too close to the sun, melting the wax and falling to his death. The myth was a parable on human ambition exceeding wisdom, a cautionary reminder that brilliance without restraint leads to ruin. 13. The madness of Heracles. Driven insane by Hera, Heracles killed his wife and children. To atone, he performed 12 impossible labors, slaying beasts, capturing monsters, and cleansing the filth of humanity. His legend became both heroic and tragic, a man whose strength couldn't save him from divine cruelty. The myth questions whether redemption can ever erase blood guilt. 14. The curse of Cassandra. Gifted with prophecy by Apollo, Cassandra rejected his advances. He cursed her so no one would ever believe her predictions. She foresaw Troy's fall, but was ignored until it was too late. Her story became a timeless metaphor for truth dismissed, echoing through history as the tragedy of ignored warnings and disbelief. 15. The binding of Ixion. Ixion, king of the Lapiths, tried to seduce Hera after being welcomed by Zeus. As punishment, Zeus bound him to a fiery spinning wheel for eternity. His endless torment represented the corruption of hospitality, one of the gravest moral violations in Greek thought, and the danger of confusing divine invitation with desire. 16. The punishment of Lycaon. King Lycaon served Zeus a meal made from human flesh to test his omniscience. In rage, Zeus destroyed his palace and turned him into a wolf. This myth gave rise to the idea of the werewolf and reflected ancient anxieties about civilization reverting to savagery when reverence and morality are lost. 17. The story of Arachne. A mortal weaver named Arachne challenged Athena to a contest of skill. When Arachne's tapestry depicted the god's scandals too truthfully, Athena destroyed it. Arachne hanged herself, and Athena transformed her into a spider so she could weave forever. It's a tale about art, truth, and the cost of exposing power through creation. 18. Orpheus and Eurydice. When Eurydice died, Orpheus descended into the underworld to retrieve her. Hades agreed, on the condition that he not look back until both had left. Near the exit, he turned, losing her forever. The myth captured humanity's tension between faith and doubt, the moment when love collapses under the weight of fear. 19. The flaying of Marsyas. Marsyas, a satyr, found Athena's discarded flute and mastered it. He challenged Apollo to a contest and lost. As punishment, Apollo flayed him alive. The myth illustrated divine dominance over mortal artistry, the brutality beneath the beauty of culture. The Greeks understood art as sacred, but never safe. 20. The tragedy of Phaethon. Phaethon, son of Helios, begged to drive the sun chariot across the sky. Lacking control, he scorched the earth before Zeus struck him down with lightning. His fall explained deserts and burned lands, but also warned against reckless pride. Even divine lineage offered no immunity from the consequences of overreaching ambition. 21. The punishment of Actaeon. Actaeon, a skilled hunter, accidentally saw Artemis bathing. The goddess, enraged, transformed him into a stag. His own hounds, unable to recognize him, tore him apart. The myth expressed the fragility of mortal boundaries, how a single transgression, even unintentional, could trigger divine annihilation. It warned that in a world ruled by gods, ignorance was no defense. 22. The doom of Pentheus. King Pentheus of Thebes refused to honor Dionysus and mocked his ecstatic cult. When he spied on their rituals, Dionysus drove the women, including Pentheus's mother, into frenzy. They mistook him for a lion and tore him to pieces. The story exposed the Greek fear of disorder. When reason mocks ecstasy, chaos answers. 23. The torment of Danae. Danae's father, warned that her child would cause his death, locked her away. Zeus entered as golden rain, and she bore Perseus. Her father set her adrift at sea in a chest, a fate worse than death. The myth reflected divine intrusion into mortal life, and how prophecy often ensures the tragedy it predicts. 24. The curse of Agave. After refusing to believe Dionysus's divinity, Agave fell into madness. Under his spell, she killed her own son, Pentheus, during a Bacchic frenzy, believing him a wild beast. When sanity returned, she saw his head in her hands. Her story mirrored Greek ideas of punishment through revelation, when truth arrives too late to save. 25. The torment of Orestes. After killing his mother Clytemnestra to avenge his father, Orestes was hunted by the Furies, spirits of vengeance. His torment symbolized moral contradiction, justice achieved through sin. Only Athena's trial at Athens freed him, marking a mythical origin for human law, replacing divine retribution. 26. The cannibal feast of Thyestes. Seeking revenge for adultery, Atreus killed his brother Thyestes' sons and served them as a meal. When Thyestes learned the truth, he cursed Atreus' line, ensuring generations of horror. This myth, central to the Atreid saga, turned kinship into horror, a cautionary tale about revenge consuming the avenger as completely as the victim. 27. The death of Adonis. Adonis, beloved of Aphrodite, was killed by a wild boar, either by accident or divine jealousy. His blood mingled with her tears, giving birth to the anemone flower. The myth tied mortality to beauty. Every bloom, a reminder that even love sanctified by gods cannot outlast the cycle of decay. 28. The madness of Ajax. After losing Achilles' armor to Odysseus, Ajax fell into madness and slaughtered livestock, thinking they were enemies. When he realized the truth, he took his own life. His tragedy captured the Greek ideal of honor, distorted by pride, showing that even heroes collapse when recognition is denied. 29. The death of Narcissus. Narcissus, famed for his beauty, rejected all affection. Cursed by Nemesis, he fell in love with his own reflection and wasted away. His death explained the Narcissus flower and warned against obsession with the self. The myth's simplicity hides its psychological depth, self-adoration as both creation and destruction. 30. The punishment of Hippolytus. A devoted follower of Artemis, Hippolytus rejected Aphrodite's worship. She punished him through his stepmother Phaedra's false accusation of lust. Theseus cursed him, and Poseidon sent a sea monster that caused his death. The myth illustrated divine rivalry, spilling into mortal lives. Piety to one god meant blasphemy to another. 31. The fate of Semele. Semele, a mortal lover of Zeus, was deceived by Hera into asking to see him in his true divine form. When he revealed himself as lightning, she was instantly incinerated. Zeus rescued their unborn son, Dionysus, by sewing him into his thigh until birth. The myth explored the fatal cost of seeing truth unveiled. Mortality cannot bear the divine unfiltered. 32. The vengeance of Medea. After aiding Jason in winning the Golden Fleece, Medea was abandoned when he sought a new bride. In revenge, she killed their children and his new wife. Euripides later reimagined her as both monstrous and sympathetic, a foreign woman betrayed by a civilization that prized loyalty but punished independence. 33. The death of Actaeon's dogs. After their master's transformation and death, Actaeon's hounds searched for him, howling in confusion. The gods, pitying them, turned them into stone. This lesser-known continuation of Actaeon's myth emphasized loyalty twisted by divine cruelty. Even innocence suffers when gods enforce their power through spectacle. 34. The caution of Pygmalion. Pygmalion, repulsed by the immorality he saw in women, sculpted his ideal of purity, a statue named Galatea. Aphrodite brought her to life as his bride. While romanticized later, the myth originally warned against idolizing perfection and confusing creation with possession, a lesson still relevant in every era of obsession and control. 35. The madness of Ino, driven mad by Hera, leapt into the sea with her son to escape imagined pursuers. The gods transformed her into the sea goddess Leucothea. Her myth expressed pity beneath punishment, suggesting divine madness could also grant rebirth, an uneasy mercy born from despair. 36. The torment of Tityus. Tityus, a giant, assaulted Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis. The gods struck him down and stretched him in Tartarus, where vultures eternally devoured his liver. Like Prometheus, he symbolized violation of sacred order. The body turned into punishment itself. Flesh made moral lesson. 37. The curse of the Danaids. 50 daughters of Danaus murdered their husbands on their wedding night, all except one. In the afterlife, they were condemned to fill leaking jars with water forever. Their endless labor represented futility as punishment, an image of guilt without end, echoing Sisyphus, but multiplied by 50. 38. The death of Glaucus of Corinth. Glaucus trained his horses to eat human flesh to make them fierce. One day they turned on him and devoured him alive. The story exemplified poetic justice. Cruelty inevitably consumes its creator. Greek myths often portrayed the natural world as moral witness, punishing excess through reflection. 39. The fate of Myrrha. Myrrha was cursed with desire for her father and deceived him into incest. When he discovered the truth, she fled and was transformed into a myrrh tree, giving birth to Adonis. The myth reflected how transgression and punishment merged in metamorphosis, the body bearing eternal shame as form. 40. The death of Laius king. Laius of Thebes abducted Chrysippus, son of Pelops, violating sacred hospitality. For this crime, his lineage was cursed, leading to Oedipus's birth and downfall. The myth traced collective guilt through generations, showing how violence, once committed, infected every descendant who tried to undo it. 41. The death of Asclepius. Asclepius, son of Apollo, became so skilled in healing that he learned to resurrect the dead. Fearing the disruption of natural order, Zeus struck him down with lightning. Later deified, he became the god of medicine. His myth balanced progress and hubris, the belief that even benevolence can threaten divine hierarchy. 42. The madness of Proetus. Daughters. King. Proetus's daughters offended Hera and were struck with madness, believing themselves to be cows. They wandered the land until cured by Melampus, who demanded a kingdom as payment. The story reflected illness as divine communication, a world-view where sanity was fragile, and the gods used delusion to reorder human pride. 43. The fate of Leto's offenders. When peasants denied Leto water while she fled from Hera, she turned them into frogs, The myth explained the origin of amphibians, but also reinforced sacred hospitality. Denying aid to the divine brought transformation, not death. A humiliation more enduring than destruction. 44. The tragedy of Hyacinthus. Hyacinthus, beloved of Apollo, was killed accidentally when a discus struck his head. From his blood grew the hyacinth flower, inscribed with the symbol of grief. The myth portrayed divine affection as dangerous, blurring tenderness and destruction, beauty born from loss, a theme central to Greek aesthetics. 45. The curse of Thebes. When Cadmus slew the dragon of Ares, he sowed its teeth, and armed warriors sprang from the earth. They killed one another until only 5 survived, founding Thebes. The myth showed that civilization itself grew from bloodshed. The city as both triumph and memorial to violence. 46. The death of Meleager. Meleager killed the Caledonian boar, but, in anger, slew his uncles during a dispute over its spoils. His mother, who possessed the log tied to his life, burned it in vengeance, causing his death. The myth illustrated fate as domestic, destruction not from gods, but from the family's inner fire. 47. The fate of Echo. Echo, punished by Hera for distracting her during Zeus's affairs, could only repeat others' words. She fell in love with Narcissus, but her voice became her only trace. The story explored loss of agency and the voice as identity, how love and punishment erase selfhood alike. 48. The crime of Erysichthon. Erysichthon defied Demeter by cutting her sacred grove. She cursed him with insatiable hunger. He devoured everything, even his own flesh, until he vanished. The myth conveyed the Greeks' moral ecology. Consumption without reverence leads to self-destruction, the eater consumed by his appetite. 49. The torment of Salmoneus. Salmoneus tried to imitate Zeus by dragging bronze cauldrons behind his chariot to mimic thunder. Zeus struck him dead for sacrilege. The story mocked human imitation of divine power, an early critique of spectacle and false authority, punished by the real thunder it mocked. 50. The curse of Tiresias. Tiresias, transformed into a woman for 7 years, was asked by Zeus and Hera which gender experienced greater pleasure. When he sided with Zeus, Hera blinded him. Zeus granted him prophecy in compensation. His myth symbolized knowledge purchased through suffering, vision given where sight is denied. 51. The death of Aeson. Jason's father Aeson, weary of old age, was rejuvenated by Medea through a ritual using herbs and boiling cauldrons. When she repeated the process for a rival king's daughters, she withheld the magic, leaving them to kill their father instead. The myth contrasted genuine renewal with deceit, showing sorcery as both medicine and manipulation. 52. The punishment of Phineus. King. Phineus abused his prophetic gift by revealing divine secrets. Zeus blinded him and sent the Harpies to steal his food. When Jason's crew later freed him, the Harpies fled, but his blindness remained. His tale served as a warning. Revelation without restraint desecrated sacred boundaries between mortal and divine knowledge. 53. The sacrifice of Iphigenia. To appease Artemis for killing a sacred deer, Agamemnon was told to sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia. Some versions claim she was replaced by a deer at the last moment. Others say she died. The myth illustrated the tension between leadership and morality, a father's obedience to divine command over paternal love. 54. The death of Penthesilea. The Amazon queen Penthesilea fought for Troy and was slain by Achilles. When he removed her helmet, he was struck by her beauty and regret. Her death symbolized the futility of war and gendered tragedy, admiration arriving only after destruction, a reflection on how valor and pity intertwine. 55. The fate of Glaucus, the fisherman. After eating a magical herb, Glaucus leapt into the sea and became immortal, but lost his humanity. He wandered eternally, longing for mortal life. His myth expressed ambivalence toward immortality. The Greeks' belief that endless existence without change is not a blessing, but a slow petrification of the soul. 56. The death of Palamedes. A clever Greek strategist during the Trojan War, Palamedes was framed for treason by Odysseus and executed. His unjust death symbolized intellect, crushed by cunning politics. In later retellings, his father exposed Odysseus's deceit, making Palamedes a martyr for truth silenced by expediency, a rare moral voice in a brutal epic. 57. The fate of Andromeda. Chained to a rock as sacrifice for her mother's vanity, Andromeda was saved by Perseus, who slew the sea monster. The myth combined hubris, punishment, and redemption, showing how innocence often pays for pride, and how heroism is built on the suffering of the undeserving. 58. The madness of Io, a priestess of Hera, became Zeus's lover. To hide her, he turned her into a cow. Hera sent a gadfly to torment her, driving her across the world. Io's wandering traced the geography of mythic geography, linking divine jealousy with the origin of nations. Her suffering was the map of empire. 59. The death of Aegisthus. Aegisthus murdered Agamemnon upon his return from Troy, taking the throne with Clytemnestra. Years later, Orestes avenged his father by killing them both. The cycle of blood vengeance completed the Atreid curse, a meditation on how justice and crime merge when violence is inherited, not chosen. 60. The tragedy of Polyxena. After Troy's fall, Polyxena, daughter of Priam, was sacrificed at Achilles' tomb. Her quiet dignity made her one of mythology's most human figures, a victim without arrogance or fault. Her death marked the final act of the Trojan tragedy, transforming conquest into ritualized cruelty, disguised as honor. 61. The fate of Laocoon. Laocoon, a Trojan priest, warned his people not to trust the wooden horse left by the Greeks. As punishment for his defiance, or perhaps for being right, serpents sent by the gods strangled him and his sons. His death became an emblem of divine irony. Truth crushed not by lies, but by faith in divine deception. 62. The punishment of Capaneus. During the siege of Thebes, Capaneus scaled the city walls and mocked Zeus, declaring that not even the gods could stop him. A thunderbolt struck him dead mid-climb. His fall was literal and moral, a visual sermon on the Greek conviction that arrogance before the divine invites instant annihilation. 63. The death of Erigone. When her father Icarius was murdered after sharing Dionysus's wine, Erigone hanged herself in grief. The gods placed both among the stars as Virgo and Bootes. The story joined sorrow and divinity, human suffering immortalized as celestial warning, where grief itself becomes part of cosmic order. 64. The curse of Minyas's daughters. While others joined Dionysus's revels, the daughters of Minyas refused. He punished them by driving them mad and transforming them into bats. The tale reflected Greek fear of rejecting communal ecstasy. Isolation turned to metamorphosis, as denial of divine experience stripped away humanity itself. 65. The death of Antigone. Antigone defied King Creon's decree forbidding the burial of her brother. She was entombed alive and took her own life before rescue came. Her defiance embodied moral law against state power, a myth that turned obedience into guilt and resistance into tragedy, anticipating centuries of ethical rebellion. 66. The punishment of Diomedes of Thrace. This Diomedes, not the hero of Troy, kept man-eating horses. When Heracles confronted him, the beasts devoured their master instead. His death echoed Erysichthon's fate, cruelty feeding on itself, Greek myth made the predator's end a moral symmetry, violence undone by its own appetite. 67. The fate of Melikerte. When Ino leapt into the sea, her son Melikertes drowned beside her. Both were deified as sea spirits worshipped in coastal rites. His myth reflected the Greek fusion of tragedy and sanctity, death as transformation, and mourning as the origin of ritual. 68. The death of Linus, a gifted musician and teacher of Heracles, rebuked his student too harshly and was struck down by him in anger. His death symbolized the peril of genius, meeting unrestrained strength, intellect destroyed by power it sought to guide, a warning buried within the hero's legend. 69. The curse of Callisto. Callisto, a follower of Artemis, was seduced by Zeus and expelled when her pregnancy was discovered. Hera turned her into a bear, and later Zeus placed her in the stars as Ursa Major. The myth merged innocence, deception, and cosmic memory. Purity punished, then sanctified by distance. 70. The death of Astyanax. After Troy's fall, Hector's infant son Astyanax was thrown from the walls to prevent vengeance when grown. His death closed the Iliad's unspoken aftermath, the obliteration of future generations. The Greeks saw in it the cruel logic of war. No legacy, no justice, only the prevention of memory. 71. The death of Palamedes' father. After his son's wrongful execution during the Trojan War, Nauplius sought revenge. He tricked returning Greek ships with false beacons, leading them to crash on the rocks. His vengeance expanded injustice into collective ruin. Another reminder that Greek morality rarely ended with balance, only escalation. 72. The fate of Clytemnestra. Clytemnestra killed her husband Agamemnon to avenge Iphigenia's sacrifice, ruling Mycenae until her son Orestes killed her. Her myth inverted gendered expectations of power, showing how vengeance and justice were indistinguishable in a world ruled by divine precedent rather than ethics. 73. The madness of Athamas. Driven insane by Hera, Athamas killed one of his children, mistaking him for a deer. The myth captured domestic horror as divine punishment. Madness used not as random cruelty, but as instrument of cosmic retribution, where private love became a stage for the god's wrath. 74. The death of Eurydice, retold. In some versions, Eurydice dies twice, first from the serpent bite, then again when Orpheus turns too soon. Her repetition of loss reflected Greek fatalism. Even when love touches the divine, it cannot rewrite mortality. Her silence in myth underscores the limits of human redemption through art. 75. The fate of Psyche. Psyche's curiosity led her to gaze upon her divine lover Eros against his command. She endured trials imposed by Aphrodite before being granted immortality. The story merged moral endurance with reconciliation, suggesting that divine love, unlike mortal love, demands suffering as proof of worth. 76. The death of Ajax the Lesser. After violating Cassandra in Athena's temple, Ajax was punished at sea, struck by lightning and drowned. His arrogance desecrated the sacred, turning heroism into blasphemy. The Greeks saw divine justice not as fairness, but as restoration of order through annihilation. 77. The punishment of Odysseus's crew. Ignoring warnings, Odysseus's men slaughtered Helios's sacred cattle. The sun god demanded vengeance, and Zeus destroyed their ship, sparing only Odysseus. Their end distilled the Odyssey's moral core. Curiosity, hunger, and defiance drive progress and ruin. The gods' world offered no forgiveness, only consequence. Greek mythology was less about gods and more about reflection, a mirror where humanity saw its hunger, fear, and ambition dressed as divinity. These 77 myths weren't moral tales meant to comfort. They were reminders that order, beauty, and reason were born from chaos, cruelty, and contradiction. The ancient Greeks didn't sanitize the world. They named it, judged it, and built civilization on its ruins.